Things never really work out quite the way we plan. But when it comes to big tech and big tech platforms, the consequences of that are our lives. I'll tell you why and what we can do about it. It's Rob Nelson Live. Hey, I'm Rob Nelson. I used to host a show on Fox, and now I do a digital live stream called That Rob Nelson Live. And my whole mission is to figure out how in this time of division we can find common ground.
Speech, and they're not allowed to do that anymore.
No, I understand what you're talking
They be focused on rebuilding California.
Oh, it's so true. Come on. This is where this gets real. He says your headings, I wouldn't want to be black and driving in a car. Right. Point there, right? Some of what's in this music, you can't sanitize it. All right, hey everybody, welcome to the show. Coming at you from my virtual studio here in Florida, Crafty in his virtual studio in LA, and you on whatever platform you're on, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube. Today, not Reddit. We had some problem with our Reddit stream, so we'll restream to Reddit on another time. So counting on you guys on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, whatever, to really weigh in with your comments, because, you know, it's not the same when you guys aren't going at it with me. All right, so here's where I want to start this today. You know, when you think about it, big tech platforms have literally shaped everything about our lives. I mean, honestly, they've transformed every aspect of our daily existence from you know, whether you're talking to Alexa to play music, or whether you're on Facebook, or whether you're getting Gmail. I mean, it's not literally just whether you're on social media. It's literally how we communicate, how we interact. And it's certainly transformed how we operate as a society and as a culture. I mean, from Twitter hate wars to literally having leaders of nations having Twitter hate wars, to increase in a level of bullying, in a level of transparency we've never known before, and to a degree of which our personal private lives are exposed, not just to others, but to the companies that built these platforms. Whether we want to give them all our data or not, if you're on them, they're accruing data on you. They're taking information on you. They know everything about you at some level. They know your patterns. They know what you do. They know based on where your cell phone is, where you're at. They know when you walk in a store. That's why you get a pop-up ad the minute you buy something. I mean, at some level, it's so interconnected through technology that it's completely transformed everything about us and taken away something so essential, which I'll get back to midway through the episode, but privacy. But here's a question I have. How much do we know about them, right? This is where it gets interesting. The leaders of the biggest tech companies have managed to keep much about them shrouded. Now, just look at, take Jeff Bezos, Amazon, Bill Gates, Microsoft, Jeff Zuckerberg, Facebook. Musk is not a social platform, but just take those four guys. Their combined worth is $440 billion. It's like $500 billion between four guys, right? They if you take the top 12 actually richest people in the world, it's $1 trillion. I mean, that's a lot of money, right? But what do we really know about them? They've shielded their lives so effectively because they have the platforms that allow them to do it, right? They can hide just about everything that we don't really know anywhere near what they know about us, which on the one hand is just interesting. Like, think of Bill Gates, right? Bill Gates was always like, you know, the stand-up guy, right? The scientist with the glasses, wanting to save the planet, do all whatever. And then, you know, comes out that his wife's divorcing him. And okay, people get divorced. They've been together a long time. And then if you follow the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, start coming out with articles that well, actually, he kept he had affairs, and he was hitting on women inappropriately at work. And they were and when he resigned from the board of Facebook, see, remember, he stepped down as CEO years ago. When he resigns from the board of Facebook, Facebook, it turns out, had launched an investigation because of employee complaints about inappropriate, sexual, requests and stuff from him. And I'm not saying he assaulted them or anything, but, they say nothing to do with it. But Facebook was in the middle of a pretty intense investigation, which had a lot of credibility. And, he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, claimed he wasn't, but now it comes out he actually was, and spent a lot of time with him. And his ex-wife to be, Melinda, Gates, is I want you to stop, right? Again, does it make him a horrible human being? No. But you would never know that. His public persona is so carefully curated for decades, right? None of us could curate our personality that carefully. None of us could stay shielded that effectively, but you can when you're a tech billionaire. Bill Gates is nothing compared to Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos literally is created not only the biggest business empire in history, but man, that guy pulls every string there is, right? I mean, he is the most calculating of all the tech geniuses and the tech giants that we have. And I thought it was fascinating watching what's come out subsequently about his breakup with, with his ex-wife, and the whole thing with the girlfriend, which again came out in the public. Not going to get into the sore details. You can follow, read, dig it up wherever you want. But what's fascinating to me is not so much what he did, or that his girlfriend's brother is the one who leaked all the texts to the National Enquirer. I don't know if you knew that, but right, the whole thing that was coming out was his girlfriend's brother who was doing it. She was showing the brother, he was leaking the stuff, and then he goes and charges his sister to represent her, to protect her. It's so twisted the whole time, going, I didn't do anything wrong. But that's another story, the brother. But Jeff Bezos' attempt to cover up what happened, to navigate the narrative we would get, went way deeper than people realized. I mean, it wasn't just a matter of him, of him kind of trying to spin the story, right? He actually went to great lengths to direct it a whole different way, to literally kind of pushing it out there that it was coming from the Trump administration and from the Saudi government, who was mad at him because he owned the Washington Post, and Khashoggi, who was the Washington Post reporter that the Saudis killed, and that he was the guy defending journalism, and then he leaks his own stuff to show them, and he comes off as sort of this guy, this saint of journalism. And what's come out is the whole thing was set up by him. He knew it wasn't coming from them. He wasn't sure where, but he knew it was coming from somewhere internal. But he just wanted to spin it a different way. That guy's a genius. What he's done, what Jeff Bezos has done, no other human being in history has ever accomplished on a business level. He's the tycoon of tycoons. Yeah, monkey arms. I'm telling you, the heterosexual, I think I'm an asexual billionaire man likes the ladies, right? If you thought Bill Gates was gay, you're wrong. He's just a nerd. But again, it's not so much what they hide about their personal lives, right? I mean, it's their power to manipulate and move it that's so scary. Mark Zuckerberg, you know nothing really about Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not saying Mark Zuckerberg does anything bad. He seems pretty squeaky clean. Seems like he's in love with his wife, been together forever. No rumors of bad conduct or affairs. And I'm not saying they're just hidden. I'm saying you would never know. You'd never know. You know you're on Facebook. They know everything about you. You don't know anything. You don't know zip about Mark Zuckerberg, except the tiny little bit he wants you to know, right? And what he can't hide from the far, far past. But the top of the top of the top is Google. My show graphic today was a picture of the two founders of Google, right? Larry Page and Sergey Brin. Nobody even knows their names. I mean, sure you do if you're a techie or if you really follow this stuff. And most people know, if you said, who founded Google? People would be like, I don't know. If I showed you pictures of them, people would be like, I don't know who those guys are. They're literally the two co-founders of arguably the most powerful tech platform, right? I mean, Google, other than being $1 trillion business, is literally probably the most expansive, powerful tech platform out there. These two guys created it. We know nothing at all about them. They know every piece of data on us. We know nothing. You know history. You can dig up their history. You can see what people said about them, but literally, they're all but not in the public light. They're just gone. I mean, they stepped away from hands-on control of the company years ago, but you never see them. They're like invisible men, which I just find funny, given that the whole issue is our privacy has been completely stripped away. But that's just one point of this. The second point that and again, arguments within, you can get it within Google, Sergey was known as a playboy, did all kinds of inappropriate stuff. I mean, one of his HR people said years ago, he's a sexual harassment suit waiting to happen. Back then you could get away with it. Now you can never find it. But Tyler, the rich and powerful have been shielded from inquiry. Always have been 100% true. But the difference is with the tech platforms, they're able to shield themselves from something that we're completely unshielded from. They're able to use the very technology that exposes everything about us to completely hide themselves, which again is part of the problem of having these individuals behind the scenes who exert so much power. I'm not going off on their cancel culture stuff or any of that. I'm going off on the fact that a handful of individuals literally exert a degree of power, not just their companies. Those individuals exert a degree of power and influence in our lives that's astronomical. And here's why, to me, that matters. Because I started this out saying things never go quite the way they're intended. And that, to me, is the most fascinating thing about all of this. Of the big tech guys, I would say only one, Jeff Bezos, may have known where he was going when he started. You know, full disclosure, Jeff Bezos and Sergey Brin and Larry Page went to Stanford at the same time I did. Bezos was in the business school. They were in the computer science school, graduate school, all of us. I was in law school. I think, could be wrong. I think Jeff Bezos might have been in a lecture. I gave a lecture from the law school. I gave a lecture in front of a big business school class about being a political entrepreneur. Jeff Bezos might have been one of the students in there. And we're close to the same age, but well, obviously, I needed to learn from him. But we were all at Stanford at the same time. I think Bezos knew early on what he was doing. He was started with books and Amazon, but his mission was way beyond. He was going to conquer every single industry there was. Jeff Bezos is like a shark. He's literally he's like Jaws. He's on a mission. He prays that mission. He never stops. He never stops. He never stops. He never stops. He builds. And he takes every single obstacle out of the way. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Whether it's rumors about his personal life, boom, going to set it up and make it look like it's the Saudis and show up at the embassy for Khashoggi's funeral and put his arms around the fiance, or whether it's knocking down attempts to unionize Amazon, or whether it's literally ruthlessly taking out any competitors. Forget the mom and pops. He'll take out the big stores. Like, that guy's on a mission to conquer. Other than that, I'd say they were all a little unintended in their consequences. You know, Bill Gates didn't know what he had with Microsoft. You know, I've told the story before, you know, my own encounter with Ken Nishi, one of the founding partners. And Ken Nishi is the reason that Microsoft didn't sell to IBM for $50 million. Bill Gates acknowledged it many times. Ken Nishi was like, we sell this, we're millionaires. We keep it, we're billionaires. I don't think Bill Gates saw exactly what he was creating. He knew what it could be, maybe, you know, for sure. Google, possibly. I mean, they had a big vision. Google had a big vision, but no certainty how big, how fast it would grow, how expansive it could become. And certainly not Facebook. Facebook really is the classic case of what I will call unintended consequences, right? So just to back up for a second, with Google, in their first letter, their first sort of founder's letter, they talked about the company not being conventional. They talked about creativity. They talked about challenge, you know, wanting to create an unbiased, accurate, free information source for everyone. That was their vision. Look what happened. And they've acknowledged, how did you ever control that from not going off the rails at some level? But it's certainly not that anymore. It's certainly not unbiased or always accurate. And it's certainly not always free. I mean, it's free in a certain way. You and I can get it for free. But the unintended consequences, and I'm not knocking Google. Google's done a lot of great things, you know. It's a remarkable company in terms of the level of services it's provided, from search engines to cloud computing, software engineering, artificial intelligence type stuff. And even, like physical things like the car, the Weibo car, whatever, like the things Google has put out there are awesome. But the unintended consequences, right? Google's vision was do no evil. Do no evil. How much evil has Google done unintentionally, unintended? But nothing comes close to Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg had no clue what he was doing when he started Facebook, which was called The Facebook, which before that was, Google was actually called Backrub when it started. Good thing they changed that name. It's because of the way it worked on the back of search engines. On the back of sites on the internet. But Facebook was, as you all know, originally a ratings app for Harvard kids, right? And here's what's fascinating. I did my deep dive research to see what I could come up with on Mark Zuckerberg from back in the day. And I found the most fascinating stuff. So it starts with this. Right after he does Facebook, the original version of Facebook, the Harvard Crimson does a story on Mark Zuckerberg. They do an entire story on Mark Zuckerberg. He's put the site up and he's pulled it back down because people all jumped on it. But there was this huge backlash because basically hacked into everybody's accounts. And I took a couple excerpts from this long Harvard Crimson piece from 2003 when he's just done the initial Facebook. And I'm going to read a couple to you. Crafty, here's the first one. Zuckerberg said his interest in computer science and boredom on a Tuesday night were the ingredients behind his rating recipe. It took less than a week for him to create the site, and he chronicled it. He began at 8:13 p.m. I need to think of something to occupy my mind. Easy enough. Now I just need an idea. 95 minutes later, he adds another entry. Okay, first of all, before we put that one up, just note, Mark Zuckerberg is that smart. He's like, I'm bored. I need something to come up with to occupy my mind. Hours later, an hour later, he's going to have the idea. A week later, he's going to have the thing that's going to change all of our lives. This is the second one. The Kirkland Facebook is open on my computer desktop. And some of these people have pretty horrendous Facebook pics. Kirkland's one of the houses at Harvard. I almost want to put some of these faces next to pictures of farm animals and have people vote on which is more attractive. Then, just before 1 a.m., let the hacking begin. Okay, so that's how Mark Zuckerberg starts Facebook, right? I want to compare ugly people to animals. Let the hacking begin. That dude hacked into like every single base. And at the end of it, he was like, made a joke about it. Like it was the easiest thing ever. He was like, what an easy thing. Like the guy's a computer genius. Facebook is cancer. In a sense, maybe monkey arms. But let's look at why it became cancer, right? Because it didn't start as cancer. It started as something pretty innocent, pretty playful. Here's what Facebook's operating. Well, actually, before we get to that, let's play a little video. I dug up some video of Mark Zuckerberg being interviewed in Palo Alto, where I lived in Palo Alto, obviously a little before this time, when he's gone out there for the summer. And this young guy who does this show from, 15 years ago is interviewing them. I have two clips. The first one's just a little mundane, but you get a sense of it. Just watch and listen.
Closed out the year with, I think, 29 schools. Came out to Palo Alto for the summer just to hang out because Palo Alto is kind of this mythical place where, all the startups come from. And now, it's like we'll go to parties on campus and, like, if we end up in someone's room, like, there's a Facebook window open. That's pretty cool.
It sort of inspires, like, people to actually meet out in public.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just an online community.
I think that the goal that we went into it with wasn't to make an online community, but sort of like a mirror for the real community. So that way you can find out something about people and see who you want to meet.
Okay, a couple interesting things. One, notice the frat boy party mentality. They're holding them guys up to do the bong. The refrigerator's packed with beers. A bunch of computer nerd frat boys and like two girls out there, like no idea what they've just done. They're just having fun. And I get it. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying, but interesting. He says, our goal isn't to create an online community. It's really just to create a way to get info on people before you meet them. Mark Zuckerberg never intended to create an online community primarily, yet Facebook became the global online community for 90% of the world's population. Period. Hands down. Hard stop. I hate when people say that, so I'm testing it out, that hard stop thing. But here's the second one. And this one's really interesting when you talk about unintended consequences or not having any idea what it is you're creating. Listen to Mark Zuckerberg's vision for what Facebook could become.
And where are you taking Facebook at this point?
I mean, there doesn't necessarily have to be more. Like a lot of people are focused on like taking over the world or doing like the biggest thing, getting the most users. I really just want to see everyone focus on college and create like a really cool college directory product that just like is very relevant for students and like has a lot of like information that people care about when they're in college.
Okay, notice the girl on the horse at the end. The camera guy just is getting every single frat boy thing he can. Mark Zuckerberg's, some people want to change the world and get as many users as possible. I just want to focus on creating a cool product for college students. And he says in the interview, you can't really do a lot if you don't stay focused. It's fascinating. Mark Zuckerberg didn't know he was going to create some tool that could change everything. Steve Jobs did. Steve Jobs had an idea that he could transform things. At some level, Bill Gates, Ken Nishi, Paul Allen had some idea that the technology they were playing with was transformative. The creators of Google certainly realized they were trying to create a company that was doing something in a way that others weren't, in a radically transformative way in technology. Mark Zuckerberg was making a cool platform for college students. It was working. He wanted to make it a more cool platform. Who cares about most users? Who cares about changing the world? Mark Zuckerberg never intended to. I almost felt for Mark Zuckerberg after watching that. I went, geez, and that guy goes in front of Congress every time something goes wrong, and we expect him to explain how he's going to fix it? Look at who he is. Not knocking the guy, but that's who he was then. He's growing. Everybody grows. But at some level, he's not the guy to figure out how to solve the world's problems or how to undo the problems he's created, because he never really meant to create what he created. It just happened. He became a billionaire. He inadvertently changed the world. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve credit for it. I'm saying it's not what he intended. He was just a kid hacking around, having fun with a cool idea to create a little cool thing for college students to meet people and then hook up with them. Not particularly deep, not particularly thoughtful, not particularly elevated, super smart in a certain way. That's the guy you want to come in and go, how are you going to fix the fact that what your company's doing is, as some of you said, creating a cancer? He's not. He can't. Doesn't know how. This is Facebook's operating principles when they first started. Check these out real quick, guys. Control over how your information is shared. Your personal information is shared with people or services you don't want it shared with. Advertisers don't get access to your personal info. We will not and never will sell any of your information to anyone. Oh, okay. How'd that work out? How did that work out? Well, it worked out like this. Got a little thing to show you here. 2019, just got a little picture of this. 2019, Facebook, Crafty, pop that pic up for me. 2019, Facebook fines $5 billion for most record-breaking fine for a tech company ever for violations of user privacy. But it was one of many, right? There was thanks, Crafty. There was the Cambridge Analytica thing, $5 billion. Thanks, Crafty. There was a Cambridge Analytica thing in 2016. That was 2019, the fine, where the data was used to target voters. In 2016, they used Facebook data. Analytica did. There was site tests they did on 70,000 people to see what happened if they changed. They not violated your privacy left, right, and center. They've never stopped violating it. One thing after another. Mark Zuckerberg's always out there. We don't mean to violate your privacy. They've been violating your privacy since the beginning. Yeah, Monkey Arms, he did kind of flunk his way into success. I'm dumb effed, as you put it, into success. No question. He was a brilliant hacker, a really good techie, and he created something with an unintended consequence that has transformed everything about everything in our lives. And it really made me think a lot about privacy and the power of privacy. Yeah, Tyler Boyd, right guy, right time, and right place. To some extent, yes, a clever, creative idea. But again, the power of what can happen, the power of how things can go in a way we never saw. We think everything's thought out. Again, I think Jeff Bezos thought it out. Things just go, and then we don't know how to put them back on the rails. And why that scares me is because that's where we're going with privacy. We are watching our privacy slide down the hill. And it's not just because tech companies can take your data. We've created a society, a culture, where literally, when you think about it, everything is about, display yourself, get the most likes, put yourself out there. We take, ultra transparency, put everything out. Everything is in a social framework. Everything's under a giant bubble or microscope that we're all looking in on. And when you're doing that, we're eroding one of the most fundamentally important things in a human being is our privacy. And we're doing it. And COVID hasn't helped. That's why I fight against this stuff about vax passports and all that stuff. I don't want the government to have data on my health. I don't want the government to know any more about me. I don't want my neighbors to know any more about me. The power of privacy is something way beyond just keeping your little secrets hidden. It's a fundamental thing about human beings. And if we erase it, if we erode it completely, God knows what happens. Last thought on this, Prince Harry. Prince Harry did an interview, went on Dax Shepard's podcast. I have a little picture of a tweet here of him with Dax Shepard and Dax Shepard's co-host. And Dax Shepard said, I don't know if you can see it all, but he goes, Prince Harry, my man, flew an Apache in Afghanistan, one of dozen surprises that left me. It goes on, but basically says, sort of stunned at how incredible it was what Prince Harry had come out and said. And then, of course, Piers Morgan, who can't get enough of it, said this. How many more times is the spoiled brat going to publicly trash the dad who's bankrolled his entire life after Harry, said that his father treated him the way he was treated? Here's what I want to say about this. I first read it. I had that same reaction. I was like, seriously, dude, like, how long are you going to do this? Like, come on. But then I thought about it. I listened, I read, I looked at what he said. And I thought, you know what? Prince Harry's pretty self-aware in some ways when you step between it. And he talked about living between the Truman Show and a zoo. And in Prince Harry's case, he didn't choose this. He was born into it. But he says, I got to grin and bear it. Get on with the job, right? He's like, I'm in my 20s. He's like, I don't want this. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. Look what it did to my mom. How am I ever going to settle down, have a real life? But he goes on to say, I realized there was nothing I could do. I couldn't change it. It's where I was stuck. There's no getting out. And that I literally had to figure out how to make it better, how to do something better with it, which I think is a noble idea. Ultimately, clearly, that idea didn't work so well. He got married between a whole number of things. I'm not going down the Meghan Markle, Prince Harry path. And I got all kinds of things about how we covered that and what I think Meghan Markle said and that was inaccurate. All that's aside. Talking about Prince Harry, a kid who grew up in the biggest spotlight. He couldn't hide from that spotlight. Watched his mother die because of it. And realizing that he just felt trapped and wanted out. And part of me was like, good for him for getting out. But his willingness to talk about his mental health and to talk about, it's rough talking about your parents, feeling like my dad raised me the way he was raised and it was pretty not good. A lot of the idea of genetic traits being passed on. But this is what caught me. He said, there are moments in my life where feeling helpless hurts. It really hurts. And that's when you think to yourself, shit, I've got the privilege. I've got the platform. I've got the influence. And even I can't fix this. I can't change this. That hit me. Because he does have all those things. The privilege, the platform, the influence. And yet he couldn't change it. Couldn't change those feelings. Couldn't change what was happening around him in his own mind. And it made me think, if a person as powerful, as public, with as many resources and assets as a Prince Harry has felt that way, how does everybody else feel? How does everybody else feel? And Monkey Arms, you say the royal family is a mental illness. Fascinated people are probably too. I disagree a little bit. I understand the fascination. It's our same fascination with celebrity. It's human nature. I don't knock people for being fascinated. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's not archaic, the royal family, the whole thing, like why Britain props that up. I'm with you. I'm merely focusing on the fact that Prince Harry was part of that without his choice, lived that life, got out of it, and is now talking about it. And what made me realize is if you feel like you're that person and you can't control it, you can't deal with it, how does the average person feel? More than that, how does the unaverage person feel? I've said for a long time, we got mental health problems in this country, and they're affecting all of us. They were affecting us before COVID. They're affecting us now, and they're going to affect us after. The mental health of our country is in trouble. The mental health of most of us is in trouble. The pandemic raised it up. The level of anxiety, the level of depression, the level of insecurity, inadequacy that social media triggered, that COVID triggered, the isolation. I've debated with people the number of suicides. Suicides went down, but now they've gone up. But you argue how many people are actually offing themselves. Drug abuse has gone up. Domestic violence has gone up. Regardless, violence is up. We have shootings every other day. Like, you can't keep up with the number of mass shootings. 4 more people killed or injured. It's like every other day somewhere. It's not in one community or another. It's not just poor communities. It's every community, rich, poor, white, black. It doesn't matter. And at some level, the state of our mental health is fractured and fracturing so that people lowest down, the people most impoverished, most lacking resources, how do they deal with it? How do they get through? We wonder why impoverished communities have higher rates of violence, why the crime rates are higher, Why? Because part of it is their mental health is so bad, and even richer, more well-off people's mental health is going down the tubes. I've made a big deal out of this. I've put my effort in where I am here in Jacksonville right now to try to create some platforms on that. I'm working on some other cool ideas with a member of the city council here on what we might be able to do around youth and mental health and mental health services. But the idea of mental health awareness is that we need more. Just say we are aware of it is nothing. We need actually to look at it differently, which led me to a really tragic story that happened in the last few weeks here in Jacksonville. It involves a 13-year-old boy who killed a 14-year-old girl. And I'm gonna, his name is Aiden Fucci. You've got a picture of him here. This is his mugshot. He's 14, and he killed Tristan Bailey, a 13-year-old cheerleader. They went to the same school. They were friends. Thanks, Crafty. They went to the same school. They were friends. And again, he hasn't been convicted of it, but I know we're not supposed to judge people before it goes to trial, but they're on footage together leaving. It's the last time she's seen his clothes. They found his bloody clothes covered in her blood in his, house, and arrested him for second-degree murder. His friend. What was troubling about this isn't just the youth violence issue, which, youth violence is lower than it was like 10 years ago in some ways, but the numbers are going back up, and it's pretty horrifying how much youth violence there is in this country. And I'll get to that in a second. But it was how young he was and how almost indifferent he was. This is a tweet of him in the back of a cop car after he's being arrested. He takes his phone out. Question how he had a phone, but he takes his phone out, takes a picture. Do we have a picture of that, Crafty? Puts it on IG with a peace sign up. And what you don't see in it, thanks, Crafty, is he then posts on the Instagram like, any of y'all know where Tristan is? Like almost like a joke. After he's probably, most likely, murdered her. A violent, brutal stabbing. And again, they were friends. They were friends. They're kids. What also struck me is how insensitized and desensitized we've become to the whole thing. This is a clip. I have two pieces of a clip. His hearing for his pretrial hearing, a detention, whether they detain him, was held, and it was held virtually. And I have two clips. The first one, watch this, you guys. It literally would make you think that this is like a Zoom meeting for like your company, like for a company Zoom meeting. It's hard to believe this is a hearing for a kid who's being charged with second-degree murder. Just watch some of the excerpts of this little bit here.
Morning, Mr. Fucci. I'm Judge Orfinger. Do you see a parent or your guardian on the screen?
No, I don't.
Aiden,
Oh, there she is. I see her.
I just have you on mute.
Judge, it's listed as iPhone
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
and Pixel, so that must be both of them. They're not named.
Mr. Snober, would you please turn your camera on? Thank you, sir.
I mean, literally. And the lawyer wasn't there at first. I didn't have that in there. And they're like, where's the lawyer? He's like, well, he's supposed to be here. Oh, he's having tech problems. Oh, we can find the judge is like, we'll appoint one if you can't get him on. And I'm literally thinking, I watched the whole thing. I'm like, geez, like they're just so matter of fact, But then this is really interesting to me again. And I'm not blaming the judge. This is what judges do. He's just very matter of fact about it. But again, it's a desensitivity. Just watch this clip of him telling the kid that he's going to finds probable cause of second-degree murder and going to lock the kid up for 21 days till his next hearing as an adult.
All right, Mr. Fucci, you're charged with second-degree murder. That is murder in the second degree. I'm going to order that Mr. Fucci be detained by the Department of Juvenile Justice. As his parents, you are responsible for payment of $5 a day. If he requires medical care, you remain liable for the payment. All right, thank you. And that concludes this detention hearing. We'll move on to our next case.
That's all I have. If I could be excused.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Nice to meet you, sir. All right, let's do Mr. Trader next, please.
I mean, I feel like I'm at the DMV. Thank you. Nice to meet you. This kid is being charged as an adult with a crime that could put him in. They'll charge him as an adult. He could go to jail for the bulk of his life. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve punishment. I'm not even weighing into whether we should be prosecuting a 14-year-old as an adult, but it's a horrific, brutal murder. I'm saying, how did we get to this point? How did we get to such a messed up point? And we are kind of desensitized to it. What's really messed up is on the trolls on social media after this stuff came out and the arrest and the whole thing. The trolls were horrible. Some of the trolls set up a friend of theirs in a gaming group to suggest he'd done the murder. And he comes out and he's like, I'm being framed by my friends, a different person. But literally he's like, everybody thinks I did it or was part of it. And the cops are like, no, we have the person we think did it. Other people were saying she's responsible for him killing her. That whole narrative. And people are trolling this and throwing hate at the family. And it's like, they should let the kid go. And it's literally again, back to what has happened to people. Where have we become so desensitized to the kid posting a selfie of himself with a joke about her? That kid has no, and I don't know, but my understanding is I was with a city councilman when the news came in, and I'll find more out about it in detail from people inside in Jacksonville. But I don't get the sense that the kid was mentally ill per se. I mean, you have to be sick to do what he did, but just that you're that disconnected. The kids are growing up in a world that disconnected, that desensitized, And when you watch the thing, his parents, you could see his mother just was I don't think they're together, the parents. You could see at different points in the thing, the mother just kind of being you could tell, oh my God, how did this happen? How did my son do this? What did I not get right? What did I not see? But at some level, I'm asking all of us, what are we not seeing? What are we not seeing? And I'm not preaching that we're all bad or something. I'm just saying I'm as much a part of it as anyone, right? What am I not seeing? What am I not aware of? And how are we collectively letting ourselves get to this point? When I was a kid, and any of you who are over 30 probably can relate to this. There were not shootings and stabbings in every school. It happened occasionally, a stabbing in a bad neighborhood in a school. Like in Milwaukee, the worst neighborhoods. It happened occasionally, every 5-6 years. Kids went out and played. I couldn't go out after dark in my particular block, my neighborhood, because it was I was between a bar and a house that was getting busted by cops all the time. My parents didn't literally want me to get beat up by by adults. But I mean, parents today don't let their kids go anywhere, and they have cell phones. You can call mom and dad anytime. You don't let your friends, getting in a cab, no one worried about it. Now people are scared to get in an Uber alone because they're not sure they're going to get home in one piece. I mean, something has changed. You can go, no. It hasn't always been this way. We have not always been a society where there was so much hate and violence and so much insecurity that was justifiable, to where people literally fear to let their kids out of their sight, not because they'll get lost, because they'll get abducted, to where people literally fear, most women fear getting into a cab or an Uber alone because they're worried they might get raped. That was not the state of affairs 20 years ago even. Something's fundamentally happened, not to mention the level of viral hate that we all are part of. It's no wonder our kids are growing up the way they are. It's like we're creating a generation of kids who literally are going to have no ability to make moral decisions and have had none of the resources to treat or deal with the mental health problems they're creating, not to mention the youth violence. So, I did some stats. 2,000 kids arrested in America every day. 20% of high school students say they've been bullied. 1 in 7 says they've been cyberbullied. This is 2 years ago. Homicides, the third leading cause of death among kids 10 to 24. Yeah, monkey arms, fist fights, but it came to that, then you'd buy the guy a beer. Fist fights, sure. And look, kids have always been bullies, but something different has happened. Kids will knife each other for the slightest thing now. It wasn't that way everywhere, and it's become that way everywhere. And I point out, these were 2 white kids living in a community near St. Augustine. It was not a poor community. They're not poor kids. This is not an impoverished community. I'm not saying the kid's some wealthy kid, but they're in a middle class environment. They're not in a ghetto. 60% of kids are white, but black kids are 2.5 more times likely to be arrested. 2/3 of the kids in juvie are kids of color. 30% of kids in juvie, in juvenile detention services are in there, have disabilities for special needs, and yet they get no special needs training there. But the point is, they have issues that aren't being resolved. And what happens with all these kids? Those issues, those mental health issues, multiply and multiply and multiply, and they grow up and they have health problems, and they have anger management problems, and they have social adjustability problems, and they become people who can't function well in society, and more violence ensues. I mean, it's an ugly, vicious, ugly cycle. And it's starting younger and younger. That's what broke my heart. I came into this last part of this episode not really knowing where I was going with it. I was just like so messed up by what I saw. I was like, and the desensitivity even of that hearing. I don't care if you're the judge. I don't know. Like, can you not just put the judge hat down for a minute and go, my heart's broken right now that you are being charged with 2nd-degree murder. You know, like, can you, there was none. It was just matter of fact, let's move on to the next case. And to the lawyer, thanks. Great to meet you. Again, I'm not picking on the judge per se. It's the whole process. It's where we've come. And it's reflected in the level of viral hate we see on Twitter and in social media. And even again, I'm not saying you guys watching my show, but everybody knows somebody who gets in these things and just starts hurtling nasty things at somebody on one side or the other, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, or just face-to-face. People getting, in grocery stores. It's like this level of just toxic whatever. To me, it all and it seeps down to kids. As adults, I think we have to set the standard, but we can't because we don't know how to fix it ourselves. And whether social media has caused it or triggered it or expanded it, or whether you want to say Trump fueled the flames as a commander-in-chief of the disruptor, divider-in-chief, or whether you want to say our toxic political environment, it's all part of it. COVID, the isolation, all of it. Like a Lord of a Flies, gone wrong on a nationwide level. But something has to be done. And at some level, it all starts with mental health, which is why I'm taking this to the idea that I honestly think we need to totally revisit how we look at mental health, how we address mental health. It's not enough that we're just all saying, yeah, I'm for mental health, and I'm coming out and sharing, Celebrity A sharing their, I had a hard time too. Yeah, I'm not knocking Prince Harry, but man, dude, you have everything. You've got every resource there is in the world. And that doesn't mean you don't suffer from mental health problems. I just mean, what about all the people who's literally watching their lives fall apart? Yeah, Monkey Arms, 100%. See, the cost per inmate per year for incarceration should be matched for rehab programs, welfare. Monkey Arms, great point. And not only that, we've privatized prisons, right? And that's created an incentive to you make money the more people you put in prison. Excuse me. You make money the more people you put in prison. I mean, honestly, maybe we should think about not just directing that money toward other things, which we should, but maybe we should think about not putting people in prison for nonviolent offenses. How about that? How about we create a restitution-based system for nonviolent crime? If you don't commit violence in the act, or you don't have you're not using a weapon, whether you discharge it or not, it's not a violent act. You simply serve restitution. We make you pay. We make you make it up. We make you earn it back. That's a positive. But yeah, to the point of what we spend nothing on mental health. I pointed out how little the CDC spends of its budget on mental health stuff. Mental health is a sickness. It's a national health crisis. And our models and tools are so old. And you talk to anyone in the mental health industry, they'll tell you the people who do it are overwhelmed, they're overworked, they're underpaid. They can't handle it. Schools have tiny numbers of people who can handle the case management for hundreds and hundreds of kids. Kids in every school system, even the better ones, are like, there's no real mental health resources for us. And yet we don't even know how to approach it. We don't even know what we're doing with it, other than we're trying almost pathetically to have kind of a conversation, which is good. But the conversation needs to be so much more, so much bigger, so much more vibrant and so much more creative. We need to take a Google-like approach, like what Google did in the beginning. We're going to be disruptors. We're going to open for creativity, challenge, change. We need to do that around mental health, which would include putting on the table that we have to reframe how we deal with all of it, even suicide. The answer to someone saying I'm suicidal is not lock them up, put them in a whatever it's called, the 24-hour hold. It's going to just, people just repress, you know? The answer is actually we have to create a vehicle for people to be allowed to have the conversation, they're having a whole different level, have a whole different level of resources. I'm going to leave this with the idea. I think mental health may be our number one health crisis, and connected the single most important crisis to causal crisis to creating the epidemic of violence, the epidemic of hate and fear that we have in this country, and not to mention the amount of lost productivity and all those things that spiraled down. It literally is probably the single most important underlying factor that we're not addressing. Foundational, more important than any other education, dealing with mental health. And we're barely cracking the surface. So guys, let's do it. Let's think about it. I'm ready to start some kind of a mental health campaign, different one than we've been doing. I'll use my platform, take it out, go everywhere with it. Start a viral conversation about mental health we're not having. You in? I hope you are. Thanks for watching. It's Rob Nelson Live.